All right, so we got our crab moving and grooving here. What we can do to add a little bit more interest to this animation is to add a nice kind of sweeping orbit camera move here, just to add a little bit more interest and kind of finish this off. And so what we're going to do first is let's turn back our fishbowl objects on so we can properly compose the shot with those elements active. And so I could go over here and just simply turn on the fishbowl elements, but you might be working in a composition that has a lot more objects in it. It might be hard to try to figure out where those fishbowl objects are, and this will demonstrate why it's so important to name things, because what we're going to do is search by name. So if I go up here to this little magnifying glass, you're going to have this search field, and this allows you to enter in anything, and it will filter out objects that have those letters in it. So if I type in fishbowl, you'll see that it's filtering out just the objects that have fishbowl in the name, so I can simply activate those objects. You'll see our fishbowl now turns on in our scene, and then we can go and we can clear out that search bar, and then if we want to hide that search bar, we can go and click that magnifying glass again. So a very handy way to search for things and isolate them in your scene. So if you want to search for seaweed, you can do exactly that and turn them on or off or apply a material, whatever you want to do. So just handy being able to filter that out using that search filter option. So with our fishbowl turned on again, what we can do is properly compose this shot and center up our fishbowl in our scene. And this is kind of hard to center things up and know what the center of our scene is because we don't have any kind of markers to let us know. Now, if we select the camera, you can see there's a dot in the center of our scene that designates that, hey, this is the center of our scene, but it's kind of still hard to see if everything's lined up correctly. So what we can do is, with the camera selected, go to display and turn on some of these compositional helpers. And they're aptly named because what they do is they help you compose your shot. So you can see there's a rule of thirds grid here, there is a crosshair, and if you twirl down these options, you can adjust the scale of things. There is the golden spiral. If you twirl down this has its own unique settings for mirroring or flipping. And you have your diagonals, your triangles. So a lot of different options here for you. You can even adjust the cells here to add a lot more grids there, but I'm going to stick with 3. And so now we have our rule of thirds grid, and now we can more accurately kind of line things up and center things here as well. So I'm kind of liking that view where we're just angled up just a little bit. And now to add a nice sweeping kind of movement, what we're going to do is build a very basic camera rig where we're just going to orbit around an object, and that object's going to be a null. So I'm going to select the null and rename this camera orbit. And so what we can do at this point is move this camera orbit null to wherever we want to orbit around. Now, this is smack dab in the center of our scene, and luckily we've built all of our objects smack dab in the center of the scene as well. The only thing we could do is maybe move this up a little bit to center to that crab. And then to animate this and set up the actual rig, what we're going to do is just place the camera as a child of this null. And now if we go to our null and we hit the R key to bring up the rotation, you can see that if I just move back and forth, this is a nice orbiting camera move. And if I zoom out enough, you can see our camera's all the way out here, but you can see what this is doing is we're just kind of orbiting the camera around. You could do a full 360 if you wanted to do like a little turntable style animation, but that's what we got going on there, and this is looking pretty good. Now, one thing I wanted to show you is that if you accidentally move your camera view and you put things out of whack, you might think that, oh, I could just do Command and Control Z to undo that camera move, and what you'll see is that that didn't undo the move, that undid the rotation of our null. So let's go and Control Y to redo that rotation, and to undo a camera move, that's a separate shortcut key. So if you want to find out where that is, you can go to View, and you can see there is a different shortcut key to undo your view. So whether that's a view without a camera or with a camera, this is going to be your undo and redo. So Command or Control Shift and Z, or Command or Control Shift and Y. So if I do that, Command or Control Shift and Z, that will undo that view that I just did, and Command or Control Shift Y will redo, okay? So that's a little bit of a gotcha. If you want to undo your view move, that is Command or Control and Shift and Z, okay? So now with this camera orbit, what we can do is, instead of going and keyframing this rotation in the heading here, what we can do is procedurally animate this using something similar to like a wiggle expression in After Effects. And what that is in Cinema 4D is something called a vibrate tag. So to pull it up, we're going to have the null object selected that we want to apply the animation to. We'll right click, go to animation tags, and go to vibrate. Okay, and so what we can do at this point is enable vibration or wiggle in any kind of property here. So position, rotation, scale, or all three, you can do whatever you want. But we only need wiggle in our rotation, so we're going to activate that. And if we hit play, you can see we have this wiggling animation with 0 keyframes needed at all. And so what this is based off of is the amplitude value here. So if we up that, we're going to go really crazy. And you can see it's kind of like a very random rotation too. So it's randomly going between different strengths back and forth. But if you wanted a smooth, controlled kind of ping pong type of rotation or animation, what we're going to do is activate this regular pulse, and that is going to ping pong back and forth pretty rapidly, so much so that it's kind of making me a little dizzy. So to control the frequency, or the speed of this rotation, we are going to lower the frequency. And what this value is how many times are you looping every 30 frames or second. So you can see we are looping 1 time every 30 frames. So you can see that we're ping-ponging 3 times throughout this 90 frame animation. So how this works to do a slower animation but maintaining the seamlessness of this animation. You can see with a value of 0.5, we slowed things down, but it's not a seamless loop anymore. What we actually need to do is we'll enter 1 back in here. And so we know this loops 1 time every 30 frames. And if we want this to slow down, what we can do is type in 1 and then the divide sign and then 3. And what this is going to do is slow this down by 1/3 and then also still loop. And the nice thing is that Cinema 4D did all that math for us. We didn't have to do that ourselves. I'm bad at math, so it's great that it does that. And what I'm going to do is also just bring down this amplitude to maybe 14, just so we're not moving such a big rotational amount there. And so I would say this is looking pretty good at this point. If you ever wanted to adjust your view, you could just easily just go in here. And maybe you're thinking, actually, I want to go and look a little bit more from this angle. Since this is all procedural, this will then just kind of orbit from this view here. Now, you also want to pay attention to the fact that we have our backdrop here showing the edge there. So whatever your camera move is, just be aware of that. And if you need to adjust things like so, you can do just that, adjusting the width so it's not cut off. And you can see, there we go, we got a nice looping camera animation using a vibrate tag, which you might consider lazy animating, but I consider it efficiently animating. So with virtual cameras, you can play not only the MoGraph artist, but the digital director of cinematography. And this is one area that is really well informed by traditional photography and cinematography fundamentals. So the more you know about these real life subjects like lighting and cinematography, the better off you're going to be overall as a 3D artist. So highly recommend you learn more about those types of fundamentals.